Hi, my name is Joyce, and this is my peer, Dira. We are fourth-year student speech pathologists from the University of Sydney. Today, our presentation will explore the topic diverse learners in the classroom. This presentation will help you identify 4 key learning styles among your students and provide you with strategies to help make your teaching more effective, resulting in better learning in your students. Before we start, we'd like to acknowledge the tradition of custodianship and law of the country on which the University of Sydney campuses stand. We pay our respects to those who have cared and continue to care for country. In order to understand the ways to support our students' learning, we need to first learn about the core learning behaviors students present with. And this information is nicely detailed by the VARK model. The acronym VARK, V-A-R-K, stands for the VARK modalities: visual, auditory, read, write, and kinesthetic. Now, we will explain more about this VARK model. Students have preferences in the way they assimilate and process information, and this concept is what the VARK learning model is all about. Fleming introduced the VARK learning model in 2006. This model stemmed from the learning style theory introduced by Fleming and Mills in 1992. The learning style theory categorizes students' learning behaviors into 4 categories: visual, auditory, read, write, and kinesthetic. Such learning style theory emphasizes that students learn best when information is presented to them in a certain way. Meanwhile, the VARK model explains the different ways a student learns. Now, we will take a closer look into each learning style. As mentioned, here are the 4 groups of learners: visual, auditory, read, write, and kinesthetic, also known as tactile learners. Visual learners can better retain information when information is presented to them visually. This can be done by flowcharts, diagrams, and symbols. These visual learners thrive with clear pictures illustrating the information hierarchy. They may even find that visualizing information in their mind helps them remember information better. To identify the different types of learners around us, we can rely on chief characteristics such as those we have just outlined or by a questionnaire. The VARK model includes a questionnaire to help us immediately identify a person's or our learning preference. This picture on the right shows how the VARK questionnaire looks like. It is a short 16-question multiple choice questionnaire containing real-life questions about your learning habit. Some example questions it includes are shown here, such as, I want to learn to do something new on a computer. I would. This VARK questionnaire is free and available online with additional resources. So if you are interested, here is the website link below. The auditory learner learns best by listening to information and explaining things verbally. Within the classroom environment, they work well in groups where vocal collaboration is involved. They may read things aloud or even create songs to help them remember information. They may also prefer listening to lectures as opposed to reading from textbooks or going over to class notes. Read-write learners prefer when information is presented with words. They may be drawn to text-heavy resources like manuals, reports, articles, and information on websites. They are note takers. They enjoy reading definitions, making lists, and reading textbooks. Finally, a kinesthetic learner is also known as a tactile learner. Such learners learn best with hands-on experience. They may be good at painting, sports, and woodworking, and enjoy activities that involve them directly manipulating objects. One example of this would be science laboratory work. These learners may even have difficulty sitting still for long periods and require frequent breaks. This is because of the physically active nature in learning. Fleming and Mills describe these learners as those who prefer concrete personal experience, examples, practice, and simulation. By this point, some of you may wonder, can someone present with more than one preferred learning style? And the answer is yes. In fact, the majority of us fall into this category, according to several literatures. And these are what we call multimodal learners. Additionally, it is important to note that there's no hard and fast rule here. Almost no one falls strictly into one category of learning style. We all share traits of each of them. However, it is the dominating learning style, meaning the one that we show more qualities of, that we are focusing on here. For multimodal learners, we separate them into three main categories: Type 1, Type 2, and Transition. Type 1 may switch from one learning mode to another depending on the work. I, for example, am a Type 1 learner. When studying anatomy, I prefer the auditory learning style, which means I will verbally recite or teach myself the information. Conversely, when watching a technique demonstration or preparing for a practical exam, I will apply kinesthetic learning, where I need to act out the events physically. The VARK Type 2 learners need input and output in all the preferred learning modes. They may take longer to practice that information from each mode, but they may result in a deeper and broader understanding of that information compared to other learners. Finally, the VARK transition learners. They are those who have a mix of both types. That means they present with both characteristics for VARK Type 1 and also VARK Type 2. Now, let's take a pause. Can you think of any students of yours who present with each of these learning styles? And what about you? What kind of learner are you? This time, let's do a quiz. Here are a few case studies. We would like you to think about what type of learners these characters are, based on the achieved characteristics. Here we have Mandy. Mandy is a 6-year-old girl attending grade 1 in her local primary school. Her teacher notices that she has difficulty sitting still during the reading period. Other teachers think Mandy has poor attention. However, Mandy is always well engaged and calm when she transitions to art class. She enjoys drawing and experimenting with colors. What type of learner is Mandy? Mandy is a kinesthetic learner. She strongly prefers getting physically involved in the learning process. Also, difficulty sitting still is a strong indication for such learners. This time we have Jason. Jason is an 11-year-old boy. He is observed to zone out whenever the teacher explains word definitions verbally. However, he becomes much more in tune when the teacher uses a projector to provide an image or video clip about the word. One time, Jason told his friend that he usually sees a picture in his mind when someone is talking. What type of learner is Jason? Jason is a visual learner because he has a strong preference for visuals. Lastly, we have Charles. Charles is a creative 8-year-old. He loves playing with Legos. His teacher notices that Charles likes to use his Lego blocks to learn maths. However, when he is learning words during English class, he enjoys writing down the new words and the definitions in his notebook. What type of learner is Charles? Charles is a type 1 learner. He prefers learning using more than one sensory modality. He switches his learning mode according to the task he is doing.
Let's now take a look at some strategies that can be used to support diverse learners in the classroom. Again, these strategies will be based on our VARK model. As mentioned earlier, visual learners learn best through the use of visuals. Now, when thinking of visuals, this could refer to the use of graphics, which could be used to represent words. So some strategies to support such students in the classroom could include supplementing verbal lessons or instructions with handouts, charts, diagrams, or tables. You could also incorporate videos and images to enhance your presentation. This makes it easier for students to follow and grasp the information that you want them to know. Studies show that some students benefit from the use of colors and shapes, so you could incorporate these in your presentation and even in handouts. Lastly, including gestures and showing students how to complete a task rather than telling them only. Now, most of these strategies have been drawn from previous studies and are based on both student and educators' experiences. And this can then be applied to students to support their learning in the classroom. And this would greatly apply for visual learners. Now, what about auditory learners? These students prefer information that is spoken or heard. So some ways to support them in the classroom could include creating group discussions, as this helps students learn from the ideas of others and from their own sharing. You could use songs or even create your own songs that could present information that you want the students to learn. It is important to walk through the information with these students. So for example, talking things over in detail to support their understanding. You could also let students participate and engage in reading their work aloud. And lastly, during the teaching process, engage students through variations in your tone, speed, and pitch of your voice. These are just some ways to support auditory learners in the classroom. There could be other types of strategies, but it is always important to remember that your strategies need to suit their learning style. Now, what about students who learn through reading and writing? These students prefer words and text as an information obtaining method. So some strategies to support their learning could include providing handouts. This allows students to follow information easily compared to just verbal instructions, using keywords and concepts so that it is easier for students to identify the key messages. You could even use lists. So for example, using ABCs or numbers such as 1 to 3 and categories. Now, another way to engage these learners is getting students to read their work aloud. Now, this would greatly depend on their age, their capability to read, and their interest in reading. It's also possible to get students to copy and take down notes. This helps students to retain information and to help them remember the information that you want them to learn rather than just talking through it. Now, using colored pens and highlighters is another way to attract attention to keywords and concepts and allow students to come back to those important information when they read and write these at a later time. Next, we have kinesthetic learners. Such students absorb information by doing rather than seeing or listening. They are very sensory people and their minds thrive on information input from things they touch, smell, taste, and experience with their bodies. For this reason, they benefit from hands-on tasks and real-life examples. So, some ways to support them include using movement, role-playing activities, including gestures when talking through lesson plans, use of tactile activities, and the use of multimedia is another means of supporting their learning. The key message here is it's really all about making your teaching as experiential as possible. Sometimes you may wonder, did you truly get your message across, and whether this will allow students to complete the task you have provided? When applying kinesthetic learning techniques, you provide a valuable opportunity to test your teaching as well in real time. So having students participate and engage in the lesson allows you to pinpoint students who are struggling and identify ways they succeed. This will then help you in developing your future lesson plans. Now, multimodal learners are those with more than one preference. Therefore, in order to support their learning in the classroom, you could incorporate a mix of each of the VARK strategies, which we have discussed earlier. So that is using visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic strategies. Let's now take a look at a case study. Lucy is a 9-year-old girl. In class, when her teacher explains information verbally, her mind wanders. She also reported that when she reads, her mind is thinking of something else. What are some strategies that can be implemented to support her learning in the classroom? In this case, we could implement some kinesthetic strategies, such as role-playing and tactile activities. This way, she can engage in activities and learn rather than just reading or just listening to verbal instructions. Another strategy could be the use of visuals, so incorporating some colors, videos, pictures to help gain her attention. Next, we have a 12-year-old boy, Daniel. In class, he usually switches off when his teacher speaks using a monotone with no expression. It is also difficult for him to just follow verbal instructions. What strategies here can be used in the classroom to support his learning? Again, there's no correct answer. However, some strategies we included are use of visuals, so giving handouts, using gestures, changing the variations in tone and expression. You could also use reading and writing strategies. So this could mean having Daniel write or copy down information. Another way is if Daniel is comfortable with reading in class, or if he loves reading, you could get him to read out things in class so that he gets to participate rather than automatically switching off in the classroom. Now, what does the literature tell us? There is currently no reliable evidence to support the use of VARK learning style preference. There's also limited evidence supporting the statement that matching teaching style to students' learning preferences improves educational outcomes. However, it is important to remember that the purpose of the VARK is not to tell educators about students' abilities or intelligence, but rather helps you understand why some students may find some tasks easier than the others. It also helps you understand that students learn in different ways and that there are some advantages when incorporating a variety of modalities to teaching. For studies that have been conducted, results show that VARK has been widely used over the years with much positive feedback provided by both students and educators. VARK type 2 is apparently deemed as the most common preference, kinesthetic is the most common single preference, and visuals being the least common. Now, to sum up, our take-home message is that there are diverse learners in the classroom, and there's many ways we can support their learning and growth. One way in achieving this is using the VARK model, and we have shared with you ways these learners may present and types of strategies to support their learning. For older students, you could use the VARK questionnaire to better understand what type of learning style your students benefit from, which could aid with your presentation and teaching style. Additionally, if ever in doubt, the incorporation of multimodality in the classroom would be the best way to support all types of learners in the classroom. This way, you use all components of VARK and help students grow as opposed to teaching one strategy. We hope this presentation has provided you with some insights on how to identify diverse learners and how to support students within the classroom.